Hi, this is Brian. Welcome back to Philosopher's Notes TV. Today we've got another great book, Extreme Ownership by Jacko, Wilink, and Leif Babin. Extreme Ownership, subtitle, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. Jacko and Leif were two of the most senior SEALs on the ground in Iraq in the most challenging parts of the Iraq conflict. Extraordinary human beings and leaders who, as the subtitle suggests, bring their SEAL wisdom into our lives to help us cultivate our leadership and overall optimizing and actualizing abilities. We've got a philosopher's note, a bunch of big ideas. We got 5 of them here. Let's start with big idea number 1. What does it mean to take extreme ownership? It's a very powerful, very simple concept. Here's the deal. Own every single thing in your life. Here's the equation you can use to know whether you have extreme ownership. You want to take 100% responsibility and have 0% blame. If you are blaming 1%, 5%, 10%, 50%, 100%, you are not being in an extreme ownership position. So check in. What's your ratio? You had 100% 0. If so, you are among the most elite possible performers on the planet. Good luck getting to 100% every single moment of every single day, but that's our standard. Figure out how much blaming you are doing in your life and quit doing that. Take 100% responsibility for every single thing in your life. Which brings us to big idea number 2 here. There are no bad teams. I think this is the 2nd chapter. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. No bad teams, bad leaders. They bring this point home via a cool story, a powerful story from Hell Week. SEAL training, obviously ridiculous. Hell Week is the most intense part of it. And during that time, they separate into boat crews, right? So imagine a crew, I think it's 6 guys, maybe it's 8, that have to do crazy stuff, right? It's a World War II era boat, 200 pounds. They've got to pick it up, run with it on top of their heads over 20-foot sand berms, miles and miles at a time. They got to paddle it out into the ocean, dump it out over, hop out, and then get back in, then paddle back and beat every other team, or they have to do extra bonus hard stuff. It pays to be a winner is what the officers who were running the show would say to these guys, right? You didn't want to lose. But they tell the story that one of the boat crews was winning every single time, boat crew 2, right? And then boat crew 6 was losing every single time. And I should mention that each of the boat crews had a leader. The most senior guy was leading the crew. And they had to get the instructions, which were complicated, right? And then take them to their team and get them to do what they needed to do. Boat Crew 2 was crushing it, and they actually had a pretty positive attitude considering what they were going through. Boat Crew 6, bickering, all, whatever, getting at each other, etc. The leader of Boat Crew 6 was convinced that the leader of Boat Crew 2 just got lucky, that he had a great team, and that his team just kind of sucked. And then the commanding officer said, you know what? Boat Crew 2, Boat Crew 6, leaders come up. I want you to switch, right? So suddenly you've got the leader of Boat Crew 2, which was crushing it, leading Boat Crew 6, which was losing every single time. And then this guy goes over here. Then what happens? Boat Crew 6 that couldn't win ever is suddenly dominating. They're winning every single time. Now this boat crew was good too because they had a culture that was created, right? But this crew went from being the worst to being first. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. This leader was blaming and blaming and blaming, whereas the other guy took 100% responsibility, said, okay, look, this is what I got to do. Let's go do what needs to get done. Remember, no bad teams, only bad leaders. If you're complaining about your team or you're complaining about your family or any organization you're part of, step up into a leadership position, take 100% ownership, extreme ownership, and make it better. Third big idea. To do that, to be an effective leader, you need to be a true believer. Jacko and Leif tell us that if you don't believe, if you don't have a resolute conviction in the power of whatever mission you're on, you're not going to be able to lead, period. And if you aren't a true believer, get yourself to a point where you can be a true believer. We talk about this in the context of hope a lot. That idea of if you don't believe that your future is going to be better than your present, you're not going to be engaged. If a leader, the research shows, isn't creating hope, right, that they're going to be able to achieve something great, then only 1% of his team will be engaged, or her team will be engaged. If there's hope, 69% will be engaged. That's crazy. If you don't have belief in what you're doing, you're not going to motivate yourself and you're not going to motivate others. This is also the first part of our motivation equation, which we haven't talked about in a while. Motivation equals expectancy times value over impulsivity times delay. Expectancy. You have to believe that you can achieve something if you want to be motivated. If you don't believe you're going to achieve something, what are you going to do? You're going to procrastinate. You're not going to go all in. You're not going to do what it takes, and you're certainly not going to take extreme ownership. So check in on whatever it is that you're doing. Do you really believe that you can do it? If you can't, make it so you can, either by getting more capacity to achieve your goal or bringing it back a little bit so it's more doable for you. Challenging and doable. Fourth big idea is what to do when you feel overwhelmed. So the SEALs and war is such a powerful metaphor for life because the fog of war, there is chaos. It's easy to get overwhelmed. And great leaders are able to simplify the battlefield. They're able to prioritize what's most important and then execute that. Rather than spin around in all the possible things they can do, they systematically say, what's the number one thing I need to do right now? What's the thing that needs to happen next for this mission to be a success? If you can't prioritize, you're just going to stay overwhelmed. Then when you've identified the number one thing, you knock that domino over. You've prioritized and you execute. Anything other than that number one thing is a distraction. We talk about this all the time. I journal every morning. I write down my number one thing and I draw that to identify the number one goal. So for you, what's your number one thing? Write it down, know what it is, prioritize it. Notice that anything other than that is a distraction, right? Of course, you're going to do other things in your life, but as you're targeting that goal in your professional and creative time, focus on that. Be creative before you're reactive. Don't hop online first thing in the morning. Identify, prioritize, and execute what you've determined is the most important. This is huge, particularly if you're feeling overwhelmed. Most people don't want to take extreme ownership. They don't want to be 100% responsible for this number one thing. It's a lot easier to diffuse your attention, right, than it is to say, I'm going all in on this and I'm going to make it happen. But that's what leaders do. They take extreme ownership of what's important and they make it happen. The last big idea is 3 alarms. So I think this was a story from Jacko, who says that he has 3 alarms to wake him up in the morning. An electronic one, a battery-powered alarm, and then a wind-up alarm. 3 alarms that he learned from one of the most intense leaders that he had, right? He was not going to fail to get up on time to do whatever it was he had to do. And he took extreme ownership of it and had 3 alarms to make sure that he hit what needed to get done. And he said that, look, when your alarm goes off in the morning, if you're waking up from an alarm, that's your first test of the day. And you're either going to pass that test or you're going to fail the test. It's a very simple one, but it's a pivotal moment, really, in your day. Did you get up and do what you said you're going to do or not? You want to demonstrate extreme ownership such that you can experience the fact that discipline, this is from a chapter on discipline equals freedom. Discipline equals freedom. When we can get ourselves to do what we need to do when we need to do it, we experience freedom. This is a choice we make moment to moment to moment to moment. We call it arete in these talks all the time. Every single moment, we're basically looking at a test. We're either going to take 100% responsibility for what we're capable of being in that moment or not. And the exciting thing is that when you actually discipline yourself, you have the freedom to respond creatively. In the context of war, when they have their basic fundamentals nailed and everything goes wrong, which is pretty much how it's always going to go, not according to plan, certainly not 100% according to plan, when you have the discipline, that you've inculcated by practicing and rehearsing, etc., before the event, and then you know what to do in these situations, you have freedom to respond with more creativity. But if you're not eating, to go back to our fundamentals we talk about all the time, if you're not eating well, if you're not moving consistently, and if you're not sleeping consistently, those basic fundamentals are not in place, there's no possible way you're going to experience the freedom of truly expressing your highest self. Discipline equals freedom. 3 alarm clocks. Remember Jacko and his commitment. Prioritize when you're feeling overwhelmed and execute. Anything other than that number one is a distraction. True believers are what it takes to be true leaders. Remember, you've got to have that belief that you're creating something great if you want motivation. 1% versus 69%. There are no bad teams, no bad families, no bad groups, only bad leaders. Step up, be an extreme ownership-based leader by owning everything. Check in on how much you're blaming. See if you can get that down to 0%. Own everything. Extreme ownership. Thank you, Jacko and Leif, for the great book and for your service and all you do. Appreciate it. What was your favorite big idea? What jumped out and landed, reminded you of something you already knew? Is now a good time to embody that and live it? Get on it. Look forward to sharing more. Have another awesome day. See you.
Awesome. Has anybody read Extreme Ownership? No. No, it's by far one of my favorite books of all time. And I do audiobooks, as everybody knows. It's really cool because they read it themselves and they sound like you would think. So a guy named Jacko Wilink, he sounds like his name would be Jacko Wilink. He's got that rough, low voice, talks like this. It's really kind of cool. But they are like legit SEALs, like they are legit people. And I was in the military. I didn't do the things extreme like they did, but I relate to a lot of the things that they talk about. So I would definitely recommend this book. It's called Extreme Ownership. I really resonate with that part where he said, own everything in your life. Like if anything happens, I always, and I do this to an extreme, and my wife always tells me that I should not do it as much as I do it, but I always take responsibility for everything. Like it's all my fault. It is all my fault. My kids didn't do something right. That's my fault. That didn't happen. It's all my fault. The sky is blue. It's all my fault. Like, and I just found that like, if you know me, like I go to one direction or the other, I don't have a lot of in between. I'm very extreme in like things I do. So I really embody that. But this is the thing that I really take away from that is that if you have 100% ownership and 0% blame, if you have blame or if you're taking the time to blame something else for your situation, what you're really doing is you're really transferring energy to someplace that's not going to serve you or do anything for you. And when you transfer energy to something else, you take it away from the one thing you could be doing to help you further whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And so when you put energy into something, you start gaining momentum in that area. And I put blame equals energy. And then we're talking about leadership. And if you look at football teams, on how football teams, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes, you just never know. But all that, like anybody knows Tom Brady. Tom Brady went from the New England Patriots and went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he won Super Bowls over here, and then he went over the team and won Super Bowl over there, and then he left. And did they win a Super Bowl after he left? He didn't. It's energy. It's intentional energy. And it's leadership. When they're talking about the boat crews running around and going from different boat crew to different boat crew, when you have an energy of a person come into a situation, it can change everything. Because if we go back to the book that I talked about before, the 10X rule, like we underestimate the amount of effort that it takes for us to get to our goal. And sometimes it takes somebody to light a match under us. It takes an energy around us to help us realize what we are capable of doing to help us get to the next level. And that's kind of what that is about right there. Where are you and where do you want to be? That I think is really, really important. All of this kind of ties together. Like wherever you're at today, where do you want to be tomorrow? You have to realize, so Hal Elrod wrote a book, and part of one of the books that he did the Miracle Morning, but he did another book called The Miracle Equation. And one of his ingredients for the miracle equation was unwavering faith, where he talks about being a true believer. Unwavering faith. You have to believe with everything in your heart that you are able to do what you need to do. And when people tell me like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm burnt out. Like, I just don't feel, it's not that you're burnt out. Like, I don't feel like we ever have the ability to burn out. I think what happens is that you lose focus on your goal and your ability to get to your goal. If you're going after a goal that you don't think you're going to achieve, why would you be excited to get up every day and try to achieve it? Right? So I equate that to burnout. This, I think, is super powerful when he's talking about basics and when he goes to base and the fundamentals of the things that you have to do. Being in the military, they have a thing that you go through. I mean, Glenn, you're in the military, right? You're in the Australian military, South African military. Before I start even making jokes, like how is that? Do you know how that's different between like the Army, the US Army versus what you guys did? What was the difference? Do you know?
I couldn't say. I would say that, of course, the US Army is bigger, but the training is mostly the same.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a basic training that you go through?
Yeah, you have basic training for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then if you become an officer, then you're basic training plus another 3 months, and then you become an officer.
You become an officer.
Yeah. So in other words, a lieutenant, second lieutenant,
yeah,
sergeant, staff sergeant.
Got it. Okay. So you probably will resonate with this a little bit. The thing that when you go into the military and you do basic training, the basic training, I wish they call it something else because the word basic, I don't think gives it its full value. When I was in the military, I went through basic training and then I went through military police academy. But the things they taught you in basic training were things that you would use every day while you were in the field. And they were things that would basically help you save your life. And you would always fall back on that consistently. And that's the same in business. When you have your business, you have the basics. Like whenever the market freaks out, everybody talks, oh, we got to get back to basics. Well, we have to get back to basics because at some point, if your business isn't doing what it needs to do, that means you left the basics. If you don't ever leave the basics, then you don't have to get back to the basics. And what are the basics in real estate? The basics are you call your database, you put people in that you find in your database, and then you call your database, and then you follow up with your database. And I think that's kind of it. Like it's not super complicated. So you just follow those basics, and those are the fundamentals. Kind of like you have to eat, sleep. I say shower, like some people don't have to, but like eat, sleep, like there's fundamentals that you have to do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that your life works the way it's supposed to work. And that's basically the basic training aspect of it.
So, Frank, sorry.
Yeah.
Just going back to basic training then, when we were doing our basic training, I couldn't run to save my life. And every time we do a 1.2 kilometer run, which was every morning,
yeah,
I'd always come in and start laps. Eventually, one of the staff sergeants said to me, "You're becoming a lieutenant, you've got to be able to run, bro." He says, we're gonna work with you. Every night they take me on a 4-mile run, and they put bricks in my backpack so I can handle the stress and the agony of it. And eventually, within 3 weeks, I was running the 2.4 kilometer race, and I was winning every time that they were pushing and pushing. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, why basics is there.
Yeah.
To push you, to get you to do things and do it right.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. One of the people that I consider a mentor of mine is Alex Hormozy, and he's a really jacked guy, and people come up to him all the time and say, how do I get bigger muscle? He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm doing 3 sets of 10, 2 to 3 days a week. And he's like, okay, how about you do 3 sets of 20, 6 days a week? And the guy's like, what? He's like, yeah, no, you got to do more to become more. So, I mean, that's, so you put weights in your pocket and you ran more and you basically built that muscle to where it was a new normal for you and it broke out. And it's the same thing with lead generation. Like if you're only calling 5 people a day and you're like, man, I don't want to call more than 5. If you start calling 10 and 20, you start talking to more people, it'll start to become normal and not seen as hard. But I mean, when you put the bricks in your popular, you probably sucked, right?
Terrible.
Yeah, yeah, and it's always gonna suck, you know, it's like what, you can make things hard now or you can make things hard later. Like things are gonna be hard at some point in time. Like it's better if you make things hard for yourself now, so you things can be easier later. If you want them easy now, they're gonna be hard later. I mean, that's just, you know, yin and yang of life and the way it works. This is where I think most agents have an issue. And that's the part where he said in the video, do you believe you can do it? And so like what I do with people is I try to break it down to the ridiculous. And like step by step by step, this is how you can do it. But sometimes when somebody, like the most common thing people tell me is like, I want to make $100,000 a year. I want to make 100 grand. I sit them down, like I sit people down every day, 2 to 3 times a day sometimes, right, Sandy? And like, number 2 question I ask them when they sit down, what's your goal in the next 12 months? 99% of the time, I want to make $100,000. So it's $100,000, 100,000. How many deals is $100,000?
Maybe one deal.
That's true. That's true. But on average, what would you say?
About 10.
I'd say 6.
6.
I'd say 6. So if you take $25,000 per commission, because the average sale price in the valley and out here is like $1 million. So it's $25,000 commission. That times 4 is 100,000, and then so that's 150,000 gross commission. You take all your fees and costs and stuff, right? It's 100 grand, like 6 deals, roughly, right? So most people that come in and sit down in front of me, they've never done that. Or they've only done it a couple times. There's nothing that's happened consistently. So conceptually, 6 figures seems like a astronomical amount of money. When in reality, there are agents that do one deal. They do one deal, they make like millions of dollars. Like there's 20, 50, $100 million properties out there that have sold. So it's more of a mindset issue. And what it all comes back to is the fear. The fear. Like there's something you're afraid of. And this is why I tell everybody, you need 3 coaches in your life. You need a business coach, you need a health coach. And I just got off the phone with my health coach this morning. I talked to him right before this thing on Mondays. And he really wanted to talk to me because I was in Vegas last week. And he's like, so how'd you do? Like, how did that go? I'm like, it actually didn't go too bad. Like I ate a lot of salt and probably some things that I didn't tell him that I ate. But like, I didn't really gain a lot of weight or anything. Like I kind of maintained, like, I think I have some salt water weight going on, but I'm actually pretty good. But you need a business coach, you need a fitness coach because your health is the most important thing. And then you need a therapist to talk to. Because like I say, someone screwed you up and it was probably your parents, and you need to talk to somebody about that. The issue is that we have fear about doing these things and we don't talk to anybody about it. We're not honest about what the problem really is. And it could be anything depending on who you are. But you have to actually have unwavering faith and you have to actually believe you can do it. And a lot of times when I go through my story and I talk to people and I coach agents and I tell people, this is really funny, is that they go, man, if you could do it, I could do it. Like, that's true. That's true. Because there ain't nothing special about me. I will tell you that. Like, I am not the smartest. I'm not the fastest. I am not any of those things. But it comes down to consistency and repetition of time on task. And my process is different than your process. Like when I tell my story on how I did 6 figures in 6 months, I tell people, like say 6 months, because from when I started to when I made it, it was 6 months. But in reality, it was 3 months, because I had to take 3 months to get out of my own damn way. Because when you start I gotta have the right business card, I have to get the right flyer, I have to research this, and I have to, we do all this extra stuff because there's fear. And so we do all this stuff to kind of feel like we're prepared to do something. And then what happened is that, for anybody that knows my story, is that, my wife at the time quit her job and she was pregnant with our first kid. And I quit my job because I thought I was going to be really good at real estate. And I remember sitting at the desk with all these phone numbers in front of me and all these names and this stupid script that I had in my head, saying to myself, you are an idiot. You are stupid. I cannot believe you quit your job. What are you thinking? Your ego's so big and blah, 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 like just beating myself up inside my head. And the thing is that I was motivated by the best motivator in the world, and that was fear. So you can have fear stop you, you can have fear motivate you. But it's like I had so much responsibility that I pushed forward. Just, I was gonna make something happen. I had unwavering faith. 100% that I was gonna make something happen no matter what. I did. And the thing is that once I got one little piece, and I knew it was possible, I did one little thing that I just ran with it as fast as I possibly could. And so he said this, and I thought he was gonna say something about Gary Keller's The One Thing, because we had that video before, but he basically said what the book, The One Thing, said. What's the one thing that by doing that would make everything unnecessary or easy and blah, 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 and that comes directly back to Gary Keller. So like, what's the one thing? What is the one thing that will help you get to where you wanna go? Does anybody wanna share their goal while they're here? Huh?
Don't give up.
Well, there's no, I mean, if you wanna guarantee failure, that's how you give up. The way you guarantee success is you just keep going no matter what. But what's the one thing that you could do, you could actually do to get you to your goal? Anybody wanna share their goal in the room for this year? No? Glenn's like, nope. But say like, let's say your goal is $200,000, right? Your goal is $200,000. Let's say that's 15 deals. Las Vegas school education. I don't know how to spell deals. Should deal like deal in card, but anyway, 200,000. That's 15 deals. So how do you get 15 deals? So what is the one thing you could do to get 15 deals? So
Social media.
So everything that everybody just said had one thing in common. What was that?
Perspective.
Prospecting. What's another word for prospecting? Lead generation. Lead generation.
Energy.
Yeah. So it's lead generation. So lead generation is the one thing right here. So when somebody sits down to coach with me, the first coaching session is usually very quick. I sit down and I say, let me see your calendar. And they show me their calendar, and usually there's a ton of blank space. Or there's a ton of things that's not important, not at all. And I ask questions, like, when do you lead generate? What are you doing between 2 and 4 o'clock? If they're a single parent, I always throw them into a trap. And I ask them, I go, what do you do between 2 and 4? Oh, I pick up my kids. What time do you pick up your kids? Like 3 o'clock. I'm like, why isn't it in your calendar? Well, I don't have to be there at 3, kind of 3:30. I can pick them up 2:30, or pick them up a little early, a little late. I say, okay, so it's negotiable. So if it's not in your calendar and you're doing stuff during the day that you know you have to do, that means it's negotiable time. And typically lead generation is not in people's calendar. So I make someone pick time. When are you going to do lead generation? I think Tracy's on here. I can pull her up right now and she'll tell you exactly when she did lead generation, how many hours she did lead generation, who she talked to, and what happened during the lead generation. Every day. Like, I give it to her because I always fell off. I could not do it every day. She is consistent and she's amazing at it. But it's the consistency of that behavior of the lead generation every day. And if you're trying to make $200,000, the best way to do that is to keep track of your numbers. How many phone calls did it take to get you an appointment? How many appointments did it take to get you a listing? How many listings did it take for you to get a deal, a closed escrow? If you start tracking your numbers, most people don't even know how many people they have in your database. And it shrinks and it grows and it shrinks on a daily basis, sometimes without you even knowing it. It shrinks and you didn't even know it because you haven't called it yet. By the time you call it, you realize that person's gone or whatever, and you have to pull them out of your database. But it's the amount of effort that you put on the lead generation every day. Like if you want to make, so 15 deals between now and, so we're March, so 2 months are down, right? So that's 10 months. So that's 15 divided by 15 divided by 12. Oh my God, 15 divided by 10, 1.5 deals a month. That is 100% possible to do right now. Just throw it, make it 2 for fun. But it's the volume of the amount of effort that you put out. So if you're lead generating, how many people are you gonna call today to start finding those 2 deals?
At least 10.
At least 10. Okay. You're gonna call 10 people. If you call 10 people every day, that's 50 people in a week. You don't get anything. How long are you gonna keep calling 10 people before you change that number? So now this is how bad do you need to make $200,000? Like how much effort are you willing to put forward? Because it is really, really easy to pick up the phone and call people. You don't need any special circumstances or special talent to be a real estate agent. But how bad do you want it? Because it's really what you're willing to do. Because there's not a lot you don't have to do a lot. But if you really, really, really want it, anybody can do this. So if you really, really, how bad do you want $200,000? Bad, sort of, okay, or really, really, really effing bad, right? So you call 10 people a day for 5 days, get nothing, 0. When do you change that number? Do you keep calling 10 people for how long?
At the end of the week, if I didn't see any result, I had to put a little bit more, another 10.
Another 10. So now week 2, you're at 20 a day.
And because sometimes, when you they answer the phone and you explain to them something, oh, no, I'm not interested, in the future, okay. And
So when somebody says maybe in the future, right?
Yes.
Good answer.
That's a good answer.
Totally bad.
Because that's called a nurture, right? So now that's a possibility for a future paycheck. So what you do is you put that person in a separate space and then you just
Right.
constantly follow up with them aggressively. I just spoke to somebody today, I don't know if he's on here or not. My friend Sean, he said he got a Facebook lead. And I'm like, how long, when did you contact him and how long did it take to become a lead? I think he said something like 2 years. 2 years, followed up with somebody for 2 years.
Yeah,
And now they're looking for a property. The thing is they would have bought 2 years ago, they would have probably got like a 25% discount on prices today. But 2 years, most people won't follow up with people for that long.
I follow more, I have the one I'm working right now
Yeah.
with the church,
Yep,
I have 4 years,
and this is the thing, is you should have, if you don't have at least 300 people in your database. Keller Williams says 201. That's great. I say 300. Because we're better, we're not average, right? So you should have 300 people in your database. Like how aggressively are you gonna follow up with those people? Because everybody there is gonna buy, sell, or rent. Everybody. You're not gonna get everybody. You're not gonna get everybody. And I always talk very aspirational on how you're going to get everybody. That's kind of, I reflected back and said, man, I think that's the way it comes off when I talk to people. You're not gonna get everybody. Case in point, just had a conversation with Tracy today. Family members, we're gonna buy out here. We showed them some property. And then Tracy's like, hey, if you go out of state, like make sure and I think they even said it, like, we want to make sure you get a referral fee. We found out today from another family member, they bought, are in escrow, didn't use us. Happens.
Yeah.
Has happened to me. It happened to me a lot in my beginning of real estate. So I'm kind of like, whatever. I had a very close family member buy 5 houses without me. It's all right. His grandkids didn't need any money. It's okay. But you have to have unwavering faith. You have to believe you can do it. You have to see that in your mind. And I can come back to my last story before we move on, is that I went through a divorce probably about 5 or 6 years into my real estate career. And I was in a really bad place and I needed to sell homes. And so I remember when I had an epiphany in my mind, I was like, people are calling you and asking you for help and trying to get you to coach them, and you're sucking right now. You suck so bad. You're a fraud. Why are you helping people when you can't help yourself? And I picked up the phone And so I didn't do 10 a day. I didn't do 20 a day. What I did, it was 9 o'clock on a Friday and my kids were in a 1-bedroom apartment in the other room, and I picked up my phone and I started going for the lowest hanging fruit. Like, who do I know that's an investor? Who do I know that's going to buy or sell? I literally started dialing. And every second I had during the day, I would go on Facebook, go on social media. So there was no 10 a day. Like, I did as many as I possibly could in one day, no matter what, until I could find business. Every second of my day that wasn't providing for my children, I was trying to get business in any way, shape, or form. So I never kept track, because I was like, there is no number. Like, I'm getting something. So like that went on for weeks, to where I would just like constantly, like if you saw me, I'd constantly be in my phone or constantly talking to somebody, trying to figure out where my next deal was going to come from. And in a very short order of time, I turned that situation around. And when I say short order, it was like 12 months. It took me about 12 months to turn it around, which that's a different story. But I knew I could do it because I'd already done it. Like I was already successful. And I just hit a speed bump in my life. And we all have speed bumps in our life, like, right? People get divorced, people pass away, people, steal from you. Like, there's all these crazy things that could happen in your life. But there's nothing that separates you from anybody that's that's selling $100 million or more in real estate. There's nothing. There's nothing. And I try to prove that when I bring Richard Schulman in. Richard Schulman's a great guy. I like him, we're friends, but I mean, there's nothing like, who saw Richard Schulman here? Who knows Richard Schulman? Is there anything special about him? Like, what would set him apart from everybody else?
He's shorter than most.
He's shorter than most of us, so he's got a height, he's
It's very serious.
his humor is very dry, right? He's got like a British humor type of thing going on, right? He jokes around with me a lot, and like he jokes around to kind of get me to laugh, but it's really hard for me to get him to laugh, and I'm always trying, right? But he's a really nice guy, but he's very matter of fact, right? I would think that somebody with more of a personality would be better in business. Wouldn't you think? I guess he proves us wrong. 300 million in sales, #1 agent in Keller Williams, Los Angeles area. So it's not that. And I mean, I would say I think Glenn has a better personality. Like, he's more fun, he jokes around a lot,
This, the way they speak, the way he talks to the buyer, the way he talks to the seller, maybe.
And that would go back to belief, believing that you can do it. He doesn't have to believe he can do it. He knows he can do it because he's been doing it. And a lot of times, like I've seen this with agents. Agents will make 100,000 and then they'll never do it again. Something in their life messed them up and they're just at a bad place and they just can't get past their own mindset. And so that's, I was successful in my first 6 months of real estate. So when I hit a speed bump and something like smacked me down, well, I knew I could get up. I just had to, I had to come back and take responsibility for my situation. I was where I was because of the choices I made. I always tell people, like, no matter what happens to you in life, you have to take 100% responsibility for it. It doesn't happen to you, it happens because of you. Now, if you want to get super negative, there are bad things that happen to you that other people do. You can't own that. You can only own yourself. But you are where you're at because of the choices you've made, period. And you're either happy with where you're at or you're not happy with where you're at. How unhappy you are with where you're at, that's going to help determine how you get to where you want to go. You have to really want to go there, though. As I've gotten older, I've realized that a lot of my goals were kind of predicated on what other people wanted. They weren't what I wanted. Once I started figuring out what I wanted, I was able to achieve things at a super, super high level from where I was before. Like right now, I have a great wife. I have, my kids are mediocre. I have great dogs. I have a great house. I have a great job. My job's elevated to where I'm coaching people. I'm leading this office. I have a great team with my wife and I'm running another office. Like, there's a lot of amazing things happening, but not one of these things happened by accident. Every single one of them happened because I was intentional And I made the decision and I took 100% responsibility for everything that I did. Nobody was like, hey, Frank, do you want to run this office? That never happened. I said, I want to do that. And then I made efforts and moved forward to make that happen. And it's the same thing in your guys' business. You guys have to say, do you really want $200,000 in the next 12 months? Because it's possible. And if you sat down with me, I would say, how many phone calls are you making today? Because based on that number, on where you're at financially, if you have no sales, no buyers, no nothing, I'm gonna say, is 10 enough? Is 20 enough?
Not even.
Like, what number is enough if you have nothing right now today and you want to get to 200,000? Because it doesn't magically happen. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort. Does that make sense? Who's on Zoom? Does that resonate with anybody on Zoom? Any comments, any thoughts? I can talk all day. Anything else for the good of the order before we play our last video? I think I covered everything there.
I agree with you. You have to want it
Yeah.
more than breathing. You just have to like sacrifice everything and just 8 weeks ago, I was miserable across the country.
You were in snow.
Negative 17 for a month.
17? Negative 17?
Negative 17.
How is that even a thing? Why do people live there?
No. And I cried and I was like, all right, what am I gonna do? And so I just made it happen and here I am.
I know. You walked in, I'm like, no way. So tell me how did you figure that out? Like how bad did you want to be here? Because first of all, where you were at, the price point's lower.
Yeah.
So you think it would be easier and you want them to come back here.
Yeah. Without sunshine, there is nothing in search of motivation. And so I kept coming to your classes.
Yeah.
And really what it came down to was the one thing, and I wake up each day, miserable, cold, pissed off. I'm like, what is the one thing that I'm gonna do today, right now, that's gonna get me back there to purpose? And I did.
Yeah.
And they were like, how did you do it? I don't know, I just did, because the one of it.
Yeah. It's mindset. That's all that is. That's 100% mindset. There's nothing skillful or different about anything that she just said. She just wanted it really bad. So now she's here. And so one of the scripts that I give to my clients is that I say, listen, it's not easy to just go talk to random people. You kind of need a reason sometimes. So I give you the reason. So like, I will say, hey, I'm in real estate. And my coach gave me a task that I have to talk to 20 new people every day, and I haven't been able to do it. And you're my first person, so I wanted to talk to you. Then you gave him a reason. So like, make up a reason to talk to people and have a conversation with people. Oh my God, you have great shoes. Like, figure out a reason to connect with somebody. And then tie that reason to what you really, really want. 200,000 is a lot of money. Make it 100,000, make it 50,000, make it something that you know is attainable, that is going to get you out of bed in the morning, fly you across the United States to come to California to like make it happen. Like, but you have to really, 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 really want it. And think back in your life of something you really, no matter how small it is, something you really, 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 really wanted. And what did you do to get it? Because a lot of times it's not how much do you want it. It's like, what are you willing to do to get it? Because there's nothing that you can't accomplish. But what are you willing to do to get it? Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they all have the same amount of time. None of them are any smarter than you guys. We all have the same brain. Like, except for me, like I have to read something 10 times more than like somebody does one time. But still, I just means I have to work 10 times harder. So there's nothing separating a lot of us. So what are you willing to do to get you to your goal? That's what you have to ask yourself. So, all right, thank you for sharing. All right, let's play the last video and get out of here.
Let me speak to that person that feels like they lost their worth or their value. This is a dollar bill. Now, if I go to the store and there's something for 90 cents, can I buy it with this dollar bill? Okay, all right. So if I go to the store and there's something for 85 cents and after tax, it ends up being 96 cents. Can I buy it with this dollar bill? Okay, all right. So what if I ball the dollar bill up? Think about it now. Like, I just balled the dollar bill up, like, so it can't be worth $1 now. It's probably worth like 95 cents, right? How much you think it's worth? $1. Listen, y'all gotta pay attention. I just balled it up, so clearly it's not worth $1 anymore. All right, so maybe, what if I step on it? What if I stomp it? I just stomped it. How much is it worth now? Maybe 65 cents, 68 cents? It's still worth $1? Okay, what if I ball it up? What if I stomp on it and then I put it in the trash can and it's in here with some trash and it's around some beer and some gum and a bunch of other nasty stuff and some guy off the street pulls the dollar out, unfolds it. How much is it worth now? Maybe 82 cents? And come on, at least 92 cents? It's okay, all right, so what if I ball it up? What if I step on it? What if I put it in trash and then, watch this, I tear it in half? Think about it now, right? How much is it worth now? $1? I could tape it? Whoa. Shh. Wait. Wait a second. I just balled it up. I just stepped on it. I put it in trash. I pulled it out. Then I tore it in half. And you mean to tell me I can pick the dollar up, I can wipe it off, and I can put some tape around it, and it's still worth $1? Then why, if this dollar doesn't lose its worth or its value, then why do you feel like you've lost your worth of value? Because many of you feel like you've been stepped on, you feel like you've been pushed aside, you feel like you've been abandoned, you feel like you've been talked about, you feel like you've been abused, like someone took from you, someone hurt you, somebody took advantage of you, and deep down inside your core, you feel like you've lost some of your value. And I am here to tell you today that this dollar still has worth and value, because there are some men years ago who put value over this life and said that no matter what happens to it, it can still be taped back together. It can still be wiped off. And I am here to tell you that you were created and you're born and you're here and you have life and you have purpose and you have value. And though you've gone through some hard times and though you've experienced some depression and you might be wanting to hurt yourself and you might want to give up, I am here to tell you you still got worth and value. And there is nothing that can happen that can take your worth and your value away. So what you gotta do now is you gotta pick yourself up. You gotta dust yourself off and you gotta keep moving.
Good. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.